Hello and welcome to another edition of Clear Vision TV. I'm Tony Richards, and on our previous editions we've been running down what I call the leader's checklist. And so the first week we talked about articulating a vision. The second week we talked about being able to think and act strategically. In our third session we talked about the ability to express confidence. And in our last session we talked about the ability to take charge and act decisively. Now today, number 5 on the leader's checklist is the ability to communicate. But it's not just the ability to communicate, it's the ability to communicate persuasively. The ability to communicate persuasively. How do you do that? Well, one way is learn to communicate in ways that people will not forget. Communicate in ways that people will not forget. In other words, you have to make your banter and your communication meaningful and memorable. One way to do that is you tell personal stories. Tell personal stories. I like to tell stories about my previous experience because I tell people I can keep you from making a lot of mistakes because I've already made them all. So I like to tell personal stories about mistakes I've made or situations where I've maybe made a misstep and I've learned from it. And that usually helps people because you tie it up in a little bit of things that happened to me are kind of funny. And so you tie that up into your communication and people remember it. Another way that you can do it is to use examples. And the simpler, the better. Analogies really work well. If you can say it's sort of like this or it's kind of like that, and you can draw an analogy between something else and the story or the example that you're communicating, it helps people remember. It helps people remember. So here's some questions to ask yourself. Am I being able to communicate effectively and persuasively? One question is, are the messages that I'm communicating about vision and strategy crystal clear and indelible? Are they crystal clear? How much clarity do people get out of my communication? And also, are they indelible? In other words, are they making a very strong impression so they won't be forgotten? Another good question to ask yourself is, have you delivered a compelling speech before the elevator passes the 10th floor? In other words, if you got on an elevator with someone in the lobby and before you get to floor number 10, I mean, they might get off at floor 9 or 7. So your communication with them would have to be very succinct, very clear, and very indelible before they get off the elevator, before the 10th floor. We'll continue to talk about this. So today's ability that we're talking about is the ability to communicate very clearly and persuasively. And we'll continue with this leadership checklist on our next edition of Clear Vision TV.